Welcome back to Grid Drop. Today we're here for F1 Manager 22, episode 4 in Imola. So far, not really a great season for Aston Martin. Kind of terrible results. Barely beating Williams. So that's the goal for today's episode, is to at least beat both the Williams cars. So at least get, P17, P18, and make sure that they're behind us for most of the race. So I think we could be fighting other cars like the Haas's in this episode. Imola, I think, will be a strong track given the medium speed corners. I think that's what our car mostly excels at. So just jumping into upgrading the race simulator. Definitely need to do some more facility upgrades. I think that'll help out development in the future, at least even for next season when we can start researching new parts. So facility upgrades, I think, right now are probably where we're focusing most of our money. So you can see on the screen before we went into facility upgrades, we have an upgrade coming on very soon. So it's the front wing is finally developed, and you can see that here. The design is now completed. So after 4 rounds of waiting, we now have a new front wing. Still waiting on the underfloor upgrade, but that will come soon enough, I'm sure. So here are the technical regulations that we voted on, I think in Saudi Arabia. I think it was round 2 when we proposed the technical regulation vote. So it's going to result in a 5% decrease for pretty much everything for next year's car, mostly aero related. So at least that's something we can focus on. Hopefully it kind of brings all the teams to more of an even start to the season. So yeah, manufacturing the new front wings for the car. Like I said, underfloor upgrade is not on the car yet. I increased the engineers on that project, so hopefully it goes by a little bit quicker, and we can get that on the car sooner as well. So another upgrade completed, the Tour Center. I did a couple of these last episode, just kind of upgrading everything I can, mostly to increase team attractiveness, for not for drivers as of yet, but I want to hire some new staff, like race engineers, head of aero, and stuff like that. So luckily we've had kind of a break between the rounds. So Australia was a couple weeks ago, so that gives us time to focus on some facility upgrades and obviously the upgrades on the car. So yeah, putting the new front wing, it's manufactured now, so putting it on both the cars. So hopefully that gives us kind of a boost in performance. I'm hoping it will. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen there's a lot of green in all the departments, like cornering, top speed, everything. So hopefully that's more of a performance boost. But into the race weekend we go.
Okay, 1, 2, loud and clear.
Green light.
So here for qualifying now, setting up Lance first, as we usually do. I kind of like to send out Lance first as kind of a guinea pig for how the car is going to perform, like timing-wise. Obviously, it's kind of hard to tell on these first laps because he ends up going like 5th or 6th, which is obviously not going to happen and at the end of qualifying one when everyone has their real laps in. So yeah, just sending out Lance first just to see kind of what the car is like. Then we send out Seb after that. And so these are just banker laps, obviously. The one thing we're struggling with mostly is improving our qualifying time. So I'm just reconfiguring onto new softs here. Lance's lap has been finished, and now Seb's is done as well. So skipping ahead a little bit to the end of Q1. So these are our push laps. The one problem that we've been struggling with a lot is improving on these push laps. So we set, like, I don't know, for example, we'll set like a 1:15.0 in qualifying, and then our push lap will be like a 1:14.9 or something. Like, they barely improve on the final laps in Q1. So that's something we're struggling with. I hope that can be fixed. I'm not really too sure how to fix that. I mean, I'm leaving these guys in automatic mode for pace. But even if I control it manually, they're on full push for fuel and pace, and they're deploying ERS, so I don't really know what I could do differently if I were to manually control them for every lap. So that's definitely something we need to focus on. Hopefully the new front wing will help us improve. Seb is, I believe, yellow to Sector 1, so yeah, he's yellow to Sector 1, so that's obviously not ideal, not really improving his lap. So unfortunately, it's looking like they might be both limited in Q1. Seb is at least green to the 2nd sector, so that gives us a little bit of hope. If he can go green to the 3rd sector, we can maybe look at getting out of Q1 and getting that P15 spot that currently Alex Albon has unlocked. So That would be definitely a good step forward. We'd at least be in front of an AlphaTauri or a Haas or something like that, and not just be fighting the Williams again. So looks like Seb is crossing the line now, and he does not improve. Lance Stroll's right behind him, and he also does not improve. So Seb currently P16. He needed to find some more time, but unfortunately we just keep struggling with that issue. So I don't really know how to fix that, but I'll look into it in the future. As for strategy, I'm going to put Seb on a one-stop. Both these drivers are going to go on a one-stop. Since we're at the back of the field, I'd rather use the one-stop and hopefully can make that work. So softs to hards for Seb, probably boxing around lap 14, somewhere around there. Maybe 15 would be ideal. As for Lance, probably going to go mediums to hards. At least that kind of splits the strategies for both the drivers. So hopefully that works out in the race. Here we go.
The crowd are on their feet in anticipation of this, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
All right, we are racing in Imola. So looking like somewhat of a decent start. Seb could definitely have the pace to fight with these guys in front. Unfortunately passed by Sonoda. I think he kind of got Sonoda off the line a little bit, and then Sonoda got us back. So not really too much harm done there. But yeah, somewhat of a decent start. It looks like Lance Stroll is absolutely flying. He passes both Albon and actually he passes Seb. I don't really want that to happen. I want Seb to be the lead car because he's on those soft compound tires. So hopefully he can kind of break the pack up a little bit and let Lance follow through. But both the Williams are behind. So that was a pretty good move by Stroll. We can see a replay right here.
Let's take a closer look. Now let's have a look. It's Lance Stroll.
Pretty good move. That's very solid. Very good racing from Lance Stroll. So luckily all the people ahead of Seb are on either mediums or hards. So hopefully we'll be able to fight with those guys for the beginning of the race. Lap 1 so far is decent. Just keeping position, which is good. Obviously Lance made up that place in front of Albon, and he's pretty much sticking to it. So I believe Latifi is on hard compound tires, so I don't really have to worry about him. Obviously his pace is pretty terrible in every race anyway. But Albon is probably the biggest threat. He's on mediums as well, so it's going to be kind of even racing between Stroll and Albon, I believe. But Seb looks like he has pace to keep up with Mick Schumacher ahead. He's actually been racing with Mick a lot. I know that happened in Saudi Arabia. We were trying to keep Mick behind. Australia was the same thing. So Mick definitely has less pace than Magnussen in the same car, which kind of allows us to fight with him more often. So hopefully we can get ahead of Mick and make that place stick. And then I also want to get ahead of Sonoda, but it looks like Vettel is going up the inside of Mick Schumacher here into the chicane in Sector 3, and it looks like that move is going to stick, which that was a pretty solid move there. I was surprised with no DRS he could make that move stick. So luckily we have DRS now. That should bring us closer to the pack. You can see Lance Stroll's perspective here. He's still sticking to Mick Schumacher ahead, so hopefully we can get Stroll even past Mick. Maybe he just has kind of slow pace this weekend. A lot of engines are definitely going to be worn. I know our engine is at like 67%. So I was considering taking an engine penalty this weekend, but I don't really think it was that necessary. Looks like Stroll could go for a move on Mick here too, but he's going to back out of it at the last second. But hopefully with the help of DRS we can get past Mick, but unfortunately he has DRS too, and I think that Haas is just a little bit more slippery in a straight line, so I don't think we'll be able to get that move done. Yeah, looks like Lance kind of backs out of it. Overtaking on the main straight in Imola is actually quite difficult in this game. The AI like to defend in the very middle of the track, and it kind of forces the overtaking car to go to the outside, which is not really a good line through turn 1. So not really too easy to get your drivers to overtake on the main straight. So got to try to find a different spot, unless they're following very closely behind out of the last corner onto the main straight. It's probably unlikely that they'll overtake. Our car is also terrible, so kind of already limits the chances of overtakes. But looks like Stroll's kind of falling behind a little bit. He's barely sticking within DRS range. Like corner to corner, it's above and below 1 second. He makes up a couple tenths through that corner, but his exit is pretty bad, and looks like we're going to have to put him into aggressive pace mode and full push for fuel to keep up. Also deploying ERS as well to keep up and stay in DRS. If we can stay in DRS, I think it'll be similar to what happened in Imola in the My Team series, where we stuck in DRS of the top 8 cars, and we were able to put like a huge gap to everyone behind. And then once we fell out of DRS, that gap was just too big to be made up by the guys behind. So hopefully a similar strategy to that My Team episode in this video, but we'll have to see. So looks like Seb is sticking with Tsunoda pretty well, 6/10 behind, wavering between 4 and 6/10, so he's sticking in DRS, which is good. We're on lap 8 now, about to turn into lap 9, and pretty solid so far. Not really too much movement through the field. Obviously Seb made up 1 place on Mick, and Stroll made up 1 place on Albon, so solid start overall, but we're 8 laps in now. I thought Seb would be fighting a little bit closer to the pack on soft compound tires. Obviously he's on the faster compound, and these guys ahead are on mediums or hard, so looks like that has finally kind of spoken itself into existence, though. At the end of lap 9, Seb is right on the gearbox of Tsunoda coming through the last 2 corners. Unfortunately, there's about 5 cars ahead of Tsunoda, so it's going to be difficult to overtake on this straight, just given that these cars ahead have less drag and most likely more powerful engines, and they also have DRS, so not really too much we can do to fight into turn 1 and overtake Tsunoda there, but we're going to have to wait for maybe a better opportunity, be a little bit more patient. I was pushing Seb on the main straight, though, like full attack mode on pace, full overtake for ERS, and full push on fuel, and it just wasn't enough. So we're going to need definitely a better exit out of those last corners. That's one thing this car struggles with a lot, too, is exits. It just seems that like every single time, even if we're right behind someone exiting a corner, they just get the power down way quicker, and their traction is a lot better. So I know statistically on this car the exits aren't that bad, but when you look at the actual like driving gameplay, you can definitely tell there's a difference. The AI definitely make up time on the exit of corners, so that's one thing I want to focus on. You can see kind of here, like Tsunoda starts to pull away a little bit. Luckily we're really pushing Seb here, going into overtake, attack on pace, and full push on fuel. And it looks like he can go for a move around the outside. That's a very unlikely move to make stick, but we're very close onto the exit for the main straight, so hopefully we can get some type of traction here, and it just looks like it's not going to happen. I don't really... kind of stuck for Seb. The softs are probably dying off a little bit, and I don't think they're going to have the same pace as the mediums. We really needed to have Seb make up the most places within the first like 10 laps, because after 10 laps, I mean, we're probably boxing lap 14, 15, depending on tire wear, obviously. But I don't want to keep him in aggressive for too long, just because I know the softs will die off very quickly. They have a tendency to just kind of fall off a cliff, so I don't want to push his tires too much, just because we'll lose tons of time by the beginning of the pit window. So I don't really want to risk doing that with Seb. I've kind of learned my lesson in past races on this game, so I don't want to do that. Lance is sticking with Mick Schumacher actually pretty decently. I know he was falling behind a lot earlier, but we chucked him up into aggressive pace, and he caught up a little bit. This race I'm a lot more diligent with ERS mode, so I'm using deploy a lot more. In past races I would put it on neutral and then pretty much strictly use overtake. So getting a little bit better at using ERS more effectively in this race. So you can see boxing Seb here. Obviously he's about to come into the pits anyway. He started losing time to Tsunoda, so I think the softs have had their day. So luckily we caught him at the right time. We can have him box immediately. We're putting on hards as per the initial strategy, so no changes with the strategy there. Hopefully no issues with the pit stop or anything. I think the hards might be able to overcut Tsunoda. I'm not really too sure. It's gonna be close, I think. It's just gonna depend on the tire wear for the mediums for Tsunoda's AlphaTauri. I don't think that the mediums... I think they'll probably start to drop off by lap maybe 25, around there. Looks like Lance Stroll is going side by side with Pierre Gasly, who off camera I cut it out, but Gasly had a lockup and fell down the order, so that gave us all a place. I believe he was only in front of Alex Albon or Nicholas Latifi. So we're on lap 19 now, and Albon actually did go into the box. I believe he's on hard compound tires. I'm not really too sure. He was on medium, so it's kind of a weird strategy from Williams. So he might have had some type of issue with damage or something like that. or just a kind of a last-minute strategy call. But yeah, unless he was on mediums and had no issue, that kind of gives me hope that his tires dropped off by lap 19. You can see Stroll's pit window is coming up, but it's nowhere near this lap. So that'll be interesting if the AI tire wear is a lot lower, or sorry, a lot higher than expected, because I could definitely bring the overcut into play with Seb at least, and those hards would definitely overcut Tsunoda if he has to box soon. So it would just mean the soft tires were definitely the better choice. As for tire wear, Stroll's tire wear looks pretty much on point. We've been keeping tabs on him. I've been going into aggressive a lot, but the mediums can definitely take some more harsh treatment. You can put him on aggressive pace for a lot of laps and not really have to deal with huge amounts of tire degradation. So yeah, we've been keeping tabs on Lance. When you see a lockup from Guan Yu Zhou.
Let's take another look. There we have Zhou. That lockup could have cost them dearly.
Kind of a weird place to lock up, but he's not really too concerned about that. He's still fighting in the points. So Alfa Romeo is really strong, surprisingly strong, actually. Both Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou are both in the points. Bottas P8. So that's a really good start to the season for Alfa Romeo. They've been, I mean, we fought with Guan Yu Zhou for a little bit in Australia, and that's just because he was on a split strategy. He was doing a two-stop. So yeah, definitely surprising from them that they've been so strong at the beginning of the season. So kind of struggling to get past Nicholas Latifi. This is Seb's onboard. You can see Latifi just blocks the middle. Oh, and Seb goes right around the outside. I was not expecting that. All right, so I guess it's more likely to have a completely unrealistic overtake around the outside of turn 1 and just fly around the outside than it is to pass on the main straight. So at least that's noted. But you can tell the way Latifi was defending, he just kind of goes to the middle of the track and it forces our driver to go to the outside, and it kind of totally ruins momentum because they have to lift into the corner, which kind of kills our time. So unfortunately, you kind of bleed time through turn 1 if you're trying to overtake on the main straight into turn 1. But most of the rest of the field is in the pits now. Lance Stroll's nearing his pit window. He's on mediums, obviously. Lap 26 is actually a little bit further into the pit window than I thought we would be. I thought we'd have to put Lance into aggressive pace for most of the race in order to keep up with Seb on the softs. And he's actually fared quite well. So we've been kind of keeping Lance in standard. Like I said earlier, though, we've been kind of keeping tabs on him. Getting better at micromanaging both the drivers at the same time, as opposed to just prioritizing Seb. I usually put Seb on the better strategy just because he usually qualifies better, so there's that. But you can see Lance just boxed for hards, and he's taking to the grass to adhere to blue flag, so that's kind of an interesting thing to do. I don't really think that was very necessary, but yeah, so Lance is on hards now. You can see his tire wear on the right hand of the screen was kind of like bang on. I mean, it was perfect pit window lap. Tire wear was totally fine, so we could probably push Lance for a lot of this next stint. Seb, unfortunately, we're going to have to keep on standard most of the time unless we get really close to another car. Obviously, we'll chuck him up into like deploy, overtake, or aggressive pace mode and aggressive on fuel. But yeah, he's got a really long stint on these hard compound tires. They're barely going to make it to the end, so he needs to stay in standard pace mode. And we can see Magnussen having an issue here.
They've gone wide. They won't be happy about that.
Just went wide. But yeah, so Seb's going to have to stay in standard pace in order to make it to the end of the race. And then Lance, we can probably push him harder than Seb. We can honestly probably leave him in aggressive for most of these laps remaining. Obviously on lap 29 up to 63 now. So about 30 laps on hards is quite easy for tire wear. So I think we can push Lance a little bit. Unfortunately, I think he just might be a little bit too far back from everyone else. He's 5 seconds behind Albon, and Albon's about a second behind Latifi. So about 6 or 7 seconds to make up to pass Latifi. Obviously, in this game especially, overtaking is very different than catching. It's very, it's not too hard to catch a car in front on new tires, but overtaking is like the weirdest thing ever in this game. It doesn't make any sense. So overtaking is going to be a little bit difficult, but and Stroll runs wide. Let's see a replay of this.
Now let's have a look. It's Lance Stroll. They're way off the race there. That isn't good.
I wouldn't really count that as running wide. barely went over track limits, but I guess that's running wide in this game. So luckily we didn't have one of those cutscenes of the entire Aston Martin garage being very upset over potentially even gaining time by going over track limits. So yeah, they like to show those replays a lot in this game. But yeah, so strategy's pretty much kind of boring.
Looks like Aston Martin have just gained a race position. Let's see what happened there. Let's have a look here. This was the Aston Martin.
We get the job done on the straight,
And
so
there
that's
they go,
at least something
moving
new.
up a position in the pack.
Usually we kind of just get blocked off into turn one, so at least Stroll had the pace to get ahead of Latifi. He's made a huge gap to Latifi already.
Here's the
You see
replay.
Guan Yu Zhou making
Let's
another
take
mistake.
Another look. There we have Joe. They've taken that far too wide, and now they're paying the price.
And that is where Kevin Magnussen ran wide as well. Magnussen's actually had kind of an interesting race. He's in P15. Yeah, not really too sure. Mick has overtaken him. I believe that must have means Magnussen boxed. I probably just didn't see it. But so yeah, strategy-wise, not really too much we can do with Seb here. He's 4 seconds back from Tsunoda. Or sorry, 8 seconds back. Jeez, this is worse than I thought. But his pace is just going to have to stay the same. I mean, we can't really push on tires because he wouldn't make it to the end of the race.
Take a look now.
Stroll making another
So
mistake
this
here.
was the Aston Martin. And they've gone wide, very wide. That's not
That was
ideal.
just a
Not ideal
corner
at
cut.
all.
That was just a corner cut. So I don't really know why these are replays. He's just going over track limits. He's not really losing time. So, but yeah. So I think looking back on it, I think we probably should have left Vettel out maybe another lap. The problem was he was starting to lose time to Tsunoda. But I think we probably should have thrown him on like attack mode for pace, just killed the tires for another lap, and then brought him in. And I think that would have maybe lowered the gap to Tsunoda a little bit. I thought that the hard compound earlier would overcut Tsunoda, but you know, it's kind of hopeful. Obviously, we're in a pretty bad car, so you know, you gotta hope for things like this. Luckily, there's been no safety car, which is kind of unlucky for us, but.
We just need to
Yeah,
push
so
now.
I've been looking at weather too, keeping tabs on that. There's absolutely nothing on the radar. So unfortunately,
Copy that.
the pace that we have right now is the pace we're going to have for the rest of the race. So like I was talking about earlier, we can throw Stroll into faster like push mode for tires. We've been kind of pushing him on fuel, so we got to save fuel a little bit. Using deploy as sparingly as we can, as strategically as we can. Seb's not really making up time to Tsunoda. Ricardo is now behind Tsunoda. I believe he just made a mistake, so unfortunately it's not like he has an issue or something. I mean, we're not going to be able to keep up with the McLaren. So yeah, it's kind of a stinker. I thought we would be sticking with Mick Schumacher a little bit. It just looks like we boxed a little bit too early with Seb. But we didn't really have a choice. The Seb's soft compound tires just degraded a little bit too quickly, so kind of unfortunate there. But yeah, kind of a boring race so far. I'm just simulating ahead a little bit. We're just maintaining gaps. I'm keeping an eye on the gap ahead and behind, keeping an eye on the tires, and managing ERS and fuel for the most part. But this looks like pretty much all we can do. On lap 48 out of 63 now, so unlikely that we're going to make up Seb's gap to Tsunoda or Ricardo. Mick Schumacher now is in front, but Seb, unfortunately, is just way too far behind. So yeah, not really too much we can do. Luckily, Stroll is keeping a very consistent gap to Albon behind. We simulated ahead to the last lap. Nothing really happened. I was just watching the gaps, making sure nothing too crazy was going to happen. A lot of blue flags as well. We've been getting lapped a bunch. So yeah, kind of the most we could do today. Luckily, you can see sort of because it's a little bit blocked, but the gap to the Williams is pretty significant. So we let Albon catch up a little bit. We mostly have been keeping Stroll on standard pace. We had him conserve for a little bit actually, and harvest ERS just to make sure we could keep Albon behind if he does get close. But I also wanted to limit mistakes because Stroll seemed to be making a couple of mistakes, so I didn't want him to spin or anything and then have Albon overtake us. But so yeah, that's why Albon kind of made up the gap. But for the most part, we were I mean, I think like 9 seconds ahead of Albon for the last like 15 laps until we started letting him kind of get a little bit closer. So at least that's a step forward, significantly faster than the Williams today. Unfortunately, not really too much we could do with the guys in front, but that was the goal for the video. So at least we could achieve that, and we're faster than both the Williams cars. So yeah, it's just kind of a struggle, this car. It's not too good. I was hoping the front wing upgrade would be a little bit more of a factor for our performance, but unfortunately just kind of, I mean, it helped us beat the Williams, but it just wasn't really there for anyone else. I mean, at the beginning of the race, we were consistently fighting with Mick. We were sticking with Sonoda, and this is a track that only has one DRS zone, so that gives us hope, especially for future rounds. I know Miami will have more DRS zones, so I think that will potentially let us fight at the front more. Hopefully we can shoot for like P14 there, just on raw pace, just because there's more DRS. Obviously, if there's a safety car or something, we can hope for something a little bit higher. But yeah, so P17 and P18 for Aston Martin. Obviously no retirements or anything. I think that's the first race of the season we've had no retirements. So yeah, just kind of raw pace wasn't really there today. But it was, like I said, it was better than Williams. So at least we're staying ahead of them in the constructors, even though we have no points. So luckily Haas doesn't have any points either, so we can hope to beat them in the standings if we can get our car better by the end of the season. But yeah, so Haas is definitely the goal, to at least beat them, but we'll have to see. So I know one of the boardroom goals is 8th or better in the Constructors' Championship this year, so we do need to beat Haas to get that bonus, but it's gonna be kind of a tough one. So just back at the menu here, looking at development, stuff like that. We now have one open slot for car research, car development, and I did get an email saying that the new regulations are now announced, so we can start researching for parts for next season. I think that's probably going to be the best route for this car. I don't think we're going to have the pace at all this year to really fight with anyone in front. So I'm going to do a Haas 2021, and I think just put all the resources into next year's car. Obviously, there's a regulation change, so that'll kind of even the playing field a little bit. Unfortunately, we wanted the 10% decrease in everything. I thought that would be better to even everyone's car, but we got the 5% decrease, so still not too bad. But starting a new project now, so hopefully researching those parts will give us some better pace in the future. I think, like I said, that front wing upgrade will help in tracks like Miami where there's more DRS zones. Imola is more of like a raw pace circuit. You need to be quick around the rest of the sectors instead of just sector 1. So yeah, so not really the best track, I guess, just because of the lack of DRS, but in the future there's definitely going to be more opportunities to pass. And I think once the underfloor upgrade goes on as well, I know that's supposed to be a lot more significant than the front wing, so that I think will help our pace as well. And those are two pretty significant downforce upgrades, so that should help us on kind of more medium speed tracks. Definitely like in Monaco, that should help a lot. But yeah, so I think next race we'll probably have to do an engine change as well. We're probably at 50% for our engine right now. Miami seems to be kind of a power track, so I'll probably throw on a new engine for that, and then probably use the slower engine for something like Monaco and just put it back on the car. But yeah, doing some more facility upgrades now. I was actually looking at some of the changes you can do for staff, and I think I'm going to probably do that next episode if I can. But yeah, so that's going to do it for today. Unfortunately, not really the best race, but we're still in a pretty bad car. So yeah, hopefully Miami, better result. We'll have better raw pace on that circuit. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one.